Hey, Wild Willie here. Got a really cool video for you. I'm excited to jump right into it. So I'm going to jump right into it. Okay. So, I've been encountering this a lot recently with some people. It's been coming up. So I wanted to do a kind of an exploration into faith and truth. Because this is a big hang up. This is kind of the root becomes the root of the problem in a lot of situations. So we're going to look at faith, we're going to look at truth. We're going to explore these two things, see their purposes, and see the problem with them. Okay, so let's go. Okay, so the first thing we got to understand is that there's three types of wisdom or information. There's three ways that a person can receive information or wisdom. Okay, so and I think I've used this example in some of my previous movies, but we're going to do it really quick. This is a Buddhist teaching, right? But we're just going to use it. So I call you up on the phone, or I make a video and I say in the video, "Hey, look, it's January. I don't know what. It's 33 degrees outside, but you know what? There's this lake down the road, and it's really wonderful. You ought to come swimming with me. I was just there swimming." And so I tell you this, right? And so I have an offering of information that I presented to you, and you say, well, it's January, it's 33 degrees outside, it's going to be cold if I get in that lake. I ain't getting in that lake. You intellectualize and you rationalize out the information, and you say, no, Willie, I ain't going in that water, right? So that's one way we accept or deny information, is based on intellectualization, right? So the next way is you say, well, I watched a lot of Willie's videos. I make the same claim, right? And you say, I watched a lot of Willie's videos. He seems like he's a little bit out there. I don't believe him. And so you don't do it. Or you say, I watched a lot of his videos. A lot of his information helps me. So I'm going to trust Willie on this one, right? And so we see that the information was either accepted or denied based on the rapport and the trust that you have with me or whatever the source is, right? So we see that there's intellectualization, there's trust and rapport with the source of information, and then but unless for the third type, right? Unless you go down to the lake, you jump into the lake, and you see or discover for yourself that the lake is fed by a hot springs and it's warm, right? Then you really don't know. You really don't know for yourself unless you experience it. See, so there's those three types of wisdoms, the three types of information and knowledge is your own experience, trust or rapport you have in another person, and your ability to intellectualize and rationalize out the information, right? So this is how we navigate all of the information that comes to us, only in those three ways. And the only one that we can really know that is truth is the one of direct experience. So the other two, intellectualization, rationalization, and trust and rapport, right, of the source, those become faith, right? So now we're looking at trust. No, sorry. Now we're looking at faith and we're looking at truth, right? So we're going to start with faith first, okay? Faith serves a purpose, okay? Some of the inspiration for this video has come from the people who I've been encountering lately. And, I encounter people, I see their problems or they tell me their problems, and I say, you got to focus on your breath. You got to really start meditating. You got to really learn how to meditate. And I see that the number one reason why people don't start or don't try meditating is because they don't believe they can do it. They have no faith. You see, faith is a chakra. Faith is the chakra above love, right? Cornucopia, faith, the mental energy chakra, right? If we master faith, we can access concentration, we can put in the work, we can get the insights, the cosmic consciousness, the cosmic understandings, right? But if I don't believe, if I don't have the faith that I can achieve this thing or do this, then I won't put in the work, the concentration, and I won't attain the results, right? So faith has a mechanism. It serves a purpose, okay? But what the problem is that we oftentimes, because faith has a purpose as a mechanism, and because it takes us to truth. Faith takes us to truth. Like in the Bible, you're only saved because of faith. Like in the Bible, Jesus said, you're saved because you believe, right? Which suggests that faith takes us to truth. You see? But the problem is people, because faith takes us to truth, often mistake faith for truth. And that's when the problem arises. The problem arises when we mistake when we mistake faith for truth, and we don't acknowledge that faith takes us to truth. Okay? So in order to understand truth, we have to look at examples. Okay? We have to look at examples. So something happens to you in your own direct experience, and you create a narrative understanding of that experience. And you build off that narrative understanding of your experience in a consistent way, right? So you create a narrative, right? But the narrative is based on your experience. It's based on truth, right? So we have truth and we have narratives, okay? So, and the narratives oftentimes, because your experience is in the moment, right? When something happens, it happens right now, and then it's over. And then we create the narrative that gives us the meaning and the understanding of the event. And that's kind of the byproduct of truth is kind of faith, because that's kind of the narrative that keeps us, hey, I tried that, it didn't work, I'm not going to try that anymore. And, our own personal narratives kind of serve as vehicles for faith in that sense. And so when we lose touch with that experience, or we move on from that in the moment experience of whatever happened, and we create the meaning of the understanding, we're leaving truth and we're starting to reside in faith. You see? So that will happen, and that oftentimes can help us or it can hinder us, depending on, what we know truth as, okay? So, we're going to use some examples to help us explain what I just kind of said, and so let's go. Okay, so the Bible is a great example. The Bible is a great example. News is a great example. Any type of spiritual teaching is a great example. Whatever, any type of information is a great example. So let's start with the Bible, right? So when I meet people and I talk to them, and maybe the Bible comes up, they say, well, there's no way. It doesn't make any sense, right? How do we know that these things happened? How do you fit all these animals in this boat? How did everybody come from two people? Or whatever, right? There's all these questions that people have. And the questions that they're asking are directed at historical facts, like historical events, right? But none of us can know that for certain because none of us were there. We didn't directly experience it. See, so that's not an issue of truth. That's an issue of faith. So depending on your experiences from the past and how you've intellectualized those experiences to create meaning and understanding for yourself, will determine who you put your trust in, and it will determine if you're a Christian or if you're a Muslim or if you're a Hindu or if you're a Mormon or if you're a Lutheran or a Seventh-day Adventist or an atheist or whatever, right? So that's faith, you see? So people, they're trying to find the truth in the faith and they're not accessing the truth. So if the Bible is true, right? We're just supposing if it is true, not historically factual, but true. what is in it that is true? Well, there's principles in there that are true. Now if I have a direct experience and I create a narrative based on that direct experience, the narrative isn't necessarily true, but the principles that the narrative is built off of, experienced by me, are true. That is truth. The principles. So there's like this theme in the Bible of good and evil, right? There's a continual war of good and evil. Satan, Jesus Christ, God, right? Satan corrupting man, and then men failing, and then, some men being righteous and holy and living up to what they're supposed to live up to. So there's this theme of good and evil, right? So is good and evil the principle? No, not necessarily. But in the Bible, it's back and forth. It's back and forth. It's back and forth. So what is the principle? Cycles. Cycles are the principle. Cycles are the principle. We can look out in our world and we can directly experience cycles every day of our life. Everything moves in a cycle. That's the principle. See, that's the principle. So if I base my narrative off that principle, and the more I understand the principle as truth, the more closely I'll be able to create a narrative that captures that principle, right? Another example of cycles occurring within the Bible of good and evil, right? A city's built, people are cool, but then over time they become really wicked, and then God has to destroy the city, right? And God has to destroy all these cities, and they have to start over, And we're seeing it right now in our real life. We're seeing it right now in our real life. People are out of their minds. It's crazy, and you know what? And the world is starting over. You see, and so we can see that this is the cycle. The principle is that all things move in cycles. You see, I got to think. Maybe, do I need any more? Hold on, let me think. Okay, so another principle in the Bible. This is kind of a more deeper principle in the Bible, right? That's captured in the narrative of the Bible, right? That speaks to a truth, the truth in this principle. That people will, if allowed to, create depravity. Like, there's some force in me that wants to create depravity. Like, this is kind of a principle. There is a force in me that wants to do bad. Okay, so is bad and good the principle? No. Bad and good are not the principle. This principle is speaking to something more deeply embedded within the human structure, right? There's a part of me that lives in, exists in duality, good and evil. And there's a part of me that wants to do good, and there's a part of me that wants to do evil. You see, so good and evil aren't the principle. The principle is that there's duality in me, and some part of me speaks to that duality, and some on one part of that duality, and another part of me speaks to the other part of the duality. You see? So this is like a truth principle, right? Now, if you study and read the scriptures, if you have faith, then you can access the truth principles and you can better yourself, right? And then if though, right, you're not clear on what it is you're gaining. Some people aren't so clear. Some people are a little more clear. It doesn't much matter. Faith becomes the truth. And then, you know what, if you're not a Mormon, if you're not a Christian, if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, if you're not a Seventh-day Adventist, you're wrong. You're wrong. And that's separation. You see, that's where I've separated because I've lost sight of the principles, the truth principles, and I've joined with the faith. You see, that's where that becomes blind devotion, and I become cut off from the truth principles within that. Right? So let's look at the news sources, right? So this is kind of an interesting one. You see, certain sources of information are built more off of truth principles, while others are not. You see? So it just so happens that religion is built off of texts that contain a lot of principles in truth, rooted in truth. If we look for the news, like I can put my faith in my political viewpoints. Like I can put my faith in CNN, or I can put my faith in Fox News, or whatever, right? But if the world is not lining up with the viewpoints of Fox News or CNN, whatever one I'm identifying with, then I'm going to have a problem. I'm going to start to become more right, and you're going to start to become more wrong, and the world's going to start to become more wrong, and everything's going to start to become more wrong. And see, you're separated. You're greatly separated. So there's really no truth principle in identifying with the news, like news sources, because they're not really runoff. Okay, they're not really runoff truth, right? You weren't there. You do not firsthand witness whatever it is they're portraying to you, so you can't know that it is real. It is only faith. So what would be the only truth principle within those vehicles for faith that is a news source? Well, I think the only principle that is real within that world is Fox News, for example. It gives you information in a more conservative way, and CNN gives you information in a more liberal way, or whatever, right? That's it. Same with political parties. It's the exact same situation. Like, you don't know if what they're telling you is true because you did not directly experience it, right? So you're putting your faith into them based on the principle that the slant is right, and that is truth. But that's not truth. That's only faith, and that's really speaking to the source and who you trust based on your previous. See, there's really not a lot of truth principles in that. It's not a spiritual teaching, right? Or maybe it's a mechanism for control. Maybe that's the truth principle in that. And then there's a force that's trying to control you and trying to control us. And then there's another force that's trying to set you free. Maybe that's the principle. This reality of duality. Maybe that's the principle, you see? So while faith can take you to truth, when you confuse faith as truth, you lose sight of what is real, what is true, and you become separated from source or from God or from truth, right? And so understanding that truth exists as principles that can be experienced and observed in real life, like that is ultimate truth, right? And there's so many levels that you can explore and experience truth, right? Tons of levels outside, many levels inside, okay? So I hope this video was helpful. I hope you gained something from it. Look for the truth principles in the things that you are putting your faith in, and try not to confuse your faith for the truth. Until next time, Wild Willie out.